Welcome to the Rethink and Return podcast. My name is Jason Shepard. Every week, we rethink things and return to God's original intention and His design. We generally do 2 recordings a week. One, we revisit a passage of Scripture that thousands of people are studying together in a Sunday gathering or in a house church, and we're just going to dig more deeply into these things that we didn't get to talk about enough or want to talk about more that we're wrestling with. And then we do another recording where we're just working out leadership things, being a pastor and ministry or leading stuff, and wrestling with tensions of how we live like that in our world today. So we'd love for you to like this, subscribe to it, share it with other people. Enjoy the podcast. We'll see you soon. Hey, thanks for joining us for the Rethink and Return podcast. I love it when we have leaders coming to town who I really love and respect, and some great people have sat at this table, and we've had some really great conversations about leadership, and we get that today. So welcome, Brian Howard. Thanks for being with us.
Awesome to be here with the Church Project and with you, Jason.
Thanks, man. You came here months ago, and we did a podcast, but the devil stole it, and it went into the abyss somewhere. And
it was a really good podcast, amazing content. Devil did want it to get out there.
It's incredible, man. I can tell why Satan would have been like, let's delete that. But somehow it got lost, and here we are. But you're back in town, so thanks for doing it again. You know, the main reason we do this podcast, we do 2. You know, one we do for whoever's following our sermons. You know, we review, like dig deep into the conversation. And then we have one that is about leadership. And mainly, I mean, my heart really is, you know, sort of the center of the target for me is like a 35-year-old pastor. So I'm just sort of thinking about him, speaking to him, things that I wish I would have had a conversation about or somebody would have said when I was that age. And so I think it'd be great to do that. But I think first, I love your perspective of the church because you see a lot of churches and you have for a long time. So can you tell everybody, if people may not know you, like what you do, how long you've done it, how you interact with the local church?
Yeah, so I've been in church ministry for a long time. I'm in my 50s now. I don't look it, I know.
No, I was thinking 30s.
30s, exactly, yeah. But been in ministry now for 30 years. So I've been a large church pastor. I've been an executive pastor a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And now I'm the president of Acts 29, which exists in 53 countries, 32 languages. We plant churches worldwide. We have over 400 men right now in our church planting pipeline.
Crazy.
So I've also spent a lot of time coaching leaders and coaching pastors, over 1,000 at this point.
Wow.
And I teach a class at Talbot School of Theology, an MDiv class, which is my alma mater. And so I've spent a lot of time working with leaders and coaching leaders and getting churches planted.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm really passionate about is longevity in ministry. We talked a little bit about that. And so, one of my goals is for people to not just start well in ministry and last 5 years, but to be able to stay the course, which requires a bunch of commitments rather than to flame out quickly. So in the church planting world, we're also concerned about that. We don't want to just get you to the altar and then drop you. So we've just recently concluded a study that took us a couple of years to pull off, and 87% of our church plants are still thriving past year 10 or have made it past year 10. And the key there is longevity. So the key there is it takes certain things in pastoral leadership to survive and thrive that long.
I'm excited to talk about that. And I've been in a cohort with you for several years now, 3, 4, maybe a little bit longer. That's been really good for me. So I've benefited from your leadership in addition to other forums beyond that. I've seen you lead, and I've seen your heart for the local pastor, and I'm grateful for it. It's been helpful to me, not only for me personally, but how I spend time with other pastors and leaders as well. And your heart for longevity is something that I really care about. I will say there have been seasons where I have really almost quit, and I differentiate that from seasons I've wanted to quit or seasons that were hard and I didn't enjoy. There were 2, maybe 2.5 times where I was super close to quitting. And I'm really glad I didn't, but I seriously thought about it. And I'm grateful for some things I've had in place that have kept me, in the game. And I think in a fairly healthy way. I mean, my marriage is strong and healthy, which I'm grateful for. My family is overall strong and healthy. I'm grateful for that. I mean, I like life. I love our church. I love our team. And I know a lot of guys who couldn't say those things about themselves. So you've just done a study. Can we just talk about maybe 2 or 3 of the most important things that you're seeing that pastors maybe aren't putting into their life, into their structure, their systems, their health, their schedule, boundaries, whatever, that are keeping them from not being healthy?
Yeah, I'll start with the two big things I would say. The first thing is really all starts with personal. So personal involves your character, your personal relationships, your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, all of that stuff. So the personal side, in terms of leadership, if your life is out of control personally in any way, then you're going to struggle in terms of leadership perseverance. So when folks have, bad character, or maybe I wouldn't even say bad character, but struggling with character issues or secret sin or things that are where they're living a double life in any way, that's going to hurt you long term. If you're struggling in your marriage, assuming that you're married, struggling with home, that's going to damage your long-term longevity and leadership. Spiritual health, I've talked a lot about, when people say, what's the key to spiritual health? And I say I'm in the Bible every day, eyes roll, and it's like, that's the deepest thing you can say. But I would say I'm still in the Bible every day. This morning I was on a plane, I flew here, and I was in the Bible this morning before I came here, So I think taking care of that character, personal, and that's going to go into personal disciplines and physical health and emotional health and all of that sort of stuff. So leadership really begins with leading yourself personally.
Well said.
So we both know people that have been in spiritual leadership, church leadership, nonprofit Christian leadership, that have had some sort of personal breakdown, whether it's a character issue or a marriage breakdown, a money breakdown somehow, a physical health breakdown. That was not that they had no control over, but the things that you have control over personally are absolutely massive. And so in my class and in teaching leaders and in coaching leaders, we always start with some sort of a life plan or some sort of a plan to make sure that you're actually leading yourself. So that would be one massive part of that.
Can I press into some of that?
Let's do it.
And then, because I know you will remember number 2, since you're deeply in this. I think character issues are obvious to people, although I think they're widespread as far as hidden sins or struggles like that. But I really think there are lack of discipline areas that wouldn't necessarily be things that some people would consider sins. But if you have, even financially, if you're not taking care of your finances well, I guess that would be on the spectrum of sin somehow, but not some hidden sin that we think about, or your health, or your marriage isn't great. So we got hidden sins on one hand, but if you're not prioritizing the health of every area of your life, the pressure of leading and pastoring, that's where it really crunches in, right? It's not just somebody hiding some sin in their life. It's really a lack of discipline in other areas that can crush you.
Yeah, I think that's just as relevant in the sense of, and when you think about personal health and personal disciplines, they're holistic. So for example, if I am prioritizing time with God every day, and if I'm trying to make sure that I take care of my physical body because I feel like I want to be a good steward of the body God has given me, I want to have energy to do ministry. I want to be alive and not die and leave my wife for a 30-year period of time. Now, I don't know when God will take me out, but I'm not trying to help him out along the way, So I would say these personal spiritual disciplines are holistic. One of the things, I made a note on my phone probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it's still on my phone. It literally said things I want my kids to know before I die. And I just kept adding things to that note, and I would take intentional time to teach them things. And my kids are all in their 20s now and adults and all doing well and thriving, and 3 of the 4 self-supporting, and one's still in college. But it's interesting, just teaching my kids about the management of finances. So much of the New Testament talks about money. just reading in my everyday Bible reading, I come across, I think it's Luke 12 that I read yesterday, that just so much good stuff for every Christ follower and young leader and pastoral leader on taking care of finances. So those personal spiritual disciplines, I should just say personal disciplines, they're holistic. And as you knock one out, you knock the next out, and you knock the next out, you tend to, how do I say this? You tend to focus on them. If you're disciplined in 2 or 3 areas, it's going to be easier to pull yourself together in all those different personal disciplines.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think somebody is generally a person of self-discipline, or they're not. And, Paul talked about that. God called us to a spirit of discipline. So when we see pastors who are out of discipline in their life, I'm concerned about them. I'm also concerned about guys who are hiding sins and who are supporting a lifestyle where you can hide sin. They're out of community, or they keep other things private that they should be sharing. So, okay, that's number one, personal. What's the next area?
The next issue I would say is for longevity is ensuring that you are, I'll just say the word call. So you have to have a strong visionary call to sustain what you're doing long term, because there's a lot trying to pull you off that path. So, for example, I love the analogy of running a race. A lot of us have run races, maybe a 5K, a 10K. Some of you have run marathons or half marathons. Imagine locking into that race. I've never run a full marathon, but I've run a couple of half marathons. I remember that first half marathon that I ran. I'm running, and you get to mile 8, 9, 10, and I'd trained for it, but I got to mile 11, and I felt sick. And then someone got sick right in front of me, like physically sick. And it was like, it just kind of tipped me. You have to look at that finish line when people are grabbing your arms, and you have to know, I have a finish line that I'm headed toward.
Yeah, that's good.
So what I would say is, if you want to endure in pastoral ministry or spiritual leadership, you've got to have a strong call. So, for example, I lead Acts 29. I'm the president of Acts 29. I have a very strong call for what I'd like to see us get done in the next 10 years. I'm convinced that God has me where I am. Like you, Jason, you're convinced God has you here in the Woodlands at Church Project. You have a vision of where you're headed. So distractions, when they come your way, aren't going to pull you off course, because you are really, really committed. So if you put these two things together and say, what is the key to, well, there's a lot of keys to longevity, but here are 2 really key things is, lead yourself personally, and all that involves. We mentioned a lot of different things, like lead yourself personally, and don't find yourself personally getting train wrecked in any way. And then second, if you want to have longevity, you can't have sort of wandering eyes for everything else all the time. You have to be locked in and feel like I'm clearly called. So let's say you're a 35-year-old church planter, pastor, and you feel like, man, this is hard where I am. Now, there's certainly a time for you to move on from where you are. So I don't want to say that God calls every person to stay where they are from 20 to 80 and to never leave. But in every situation you're in, you're going to struggle. You're going to experience sabotage and difficulty and people that are against you. And you're going to have a really, really strong sense of the call of God. The call of God, not meaning just an inner voice, but like, I love Keller's desire, affirmation, and opportunity. I desire to be here. I've been affirmed by the people around me. The opportunity is here. And so having said that, I have a strong call that I'm supposed to complete this race. Now, by complete this race, I don't mean run it till you're 90. But you have a sense of call to say, I'm staying the course here, man. I want to have longevity. And I think different people are called to different things, even in ministry.
Well, I would resonate with that. When people ask me, how do you know you're called? I say, well, because I'm still doing it. And it's sort of a simplistic version, like you said, I'm in the Bible every day. But I mean, the fact that I am still doing this is part of the reason why I know I'm called and how I show I'm called. But I have this pull to continue that outweighs the pull to stop.
which I would say that's God pulling you most likely. You know, I think you can be pulled by things that aren't God. People can be pulled by self-ambition, but again, that's leading yourself personally and making sure that you're staying close to God. And that if you feel like, I really think God wants me to be doing this, He doesn't need me, but He's choosing to use us. It's His field. He allows us to work in it.
Yeah.
It's His building. He allows us to work on it.
Yeah.
You know, but if you feel like, man, I have a pull here, for me, assuming that I'm in step with God, I would go, God wants you to do this.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think I would have to have such clarity and a strong pull away from this that would outweigh the strong pull I know to be here. And there will be a point in my life where that happens, whether it be it's time to hand this over to somebody else, or it's time for me to do something else, or whatever, I don't know. But I like you, have some thoughts in my mind of what I think God has called me to do with my life and here and through here, that I know I have a long runway ahead of me, and I've got to make sure that I have the energy for it and the endurance for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have this personal pay attention to things in your life, and we have this call. You know, I'm finding people who may feel really called, and maybe they are, and I think they're disciplined, but there is this other element of structure around a person to help them stay. And I have found the guys who stay long and lead well for an extended period of time, there's a structure around them to help them, because we all know, man, I can't do this by myself. There's no way I can do this by myself. The structure around us has to be right. I mean, there are things we're having to restructure now because we waited too long to do it because of time or size or whatever. So we're having to pay attention to those things, and that's hard. But I know I have to do it in order to allow us to keep moving ahead. What part does supporting structure, surrounding structure play in a leader's longevity?
All right, I'm going to give you a couple more things here. The
Great.
first one, I'm going to step back before that question
All right.
and say what you have to even build that structure. The first thing I would say is master your craft. So let's say that you've personally, you prioritize personal character, personal discipline, staying connected to God. You have a clear call of what you want to do in vocational ministry. The third thing I would say is master your craft. Don't be the guy who went to seminary, took 2 preaching classes, and is still preaching the same way 25 years later. You have to prioritize leadership growth all the time. So you're growing personally, you're mastering your craft. You've been in ministry 20 years, you should have read 20 preaching books by now. And gotten better as a preacher every year. You're getting coaching, you're reading, your people around you. So the first thing I would say is prioritize your own competence. All right, so master your craft. Now, in doing that, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to attract people around you that are going to provide structure for you, and you're going to have the skill to build systems, both yourself and with the people around you. So if we're building sort of a holistic leadership plan here, let's start with personal character, and let's move to making sure that you're called. Thirdly, let's highly prioritize your competence, ensuring that you're mastering your craft, that you're the best you could possibly be, working excellently to the glory of God. And then from there, I would say you've got to get the right kind of people around you who are going to build the right kind of systems and structures for your church to thrive. So I do a thing that, Jason, you've heard me do called Reasons That Churches Stop Growing. I've got 8 reasons that churches stop growing. I probably can't remember all 8 off the top of my head, but the first 3 I remember really clearly. Number 1 is your own sort of, you're the ceiling. It's like you've got to continue growing because your church won't outgrow you. They might outgrow you, and then you might not be here because they've outgrown you. Second are the people that are around you. So you have to really prioritize finding, building, developing, emphasis on developing leaders around you that are going to create that structure for you to thrive. And then thirdly, I mean, this is kind of I hate to say it's a distant third because it's super important, but if you do those first 2, the third one's going to happen, which is creating systems and structures to facilitate success and growth, fruitfulness. So Like, is your church ready for the next 300 people? Could you even know what to do with them if they come? Are you ready for the next 600 people? So if that's what you mean by structure, then those are three things I would say.
I think I do. Like, I think if we don't build a structure with the right people around us and the right ways things happen, I think we can't make it. I do think that some people ignore that. And even though they have great character, they love their wife well, they're loving God well, they're taking care of themselves well, and they're really called, I think they ignore this. And I don't know how this will come out to say like this, but I think people over-spiritualize things to the point that they dismiss some actual practical things in their life. I mean, I wish that I didn't have to focus on structure the way I need to at times, but I do see enough clues in Scripture to go, well, Paul told Titus to straighten things out. I think that included some systems that were not operating. We see the guys in the early church. I mean, we had they were so granular on their system. They saw two different groups of widows, Hellenistic and Greeks, who weren't being treated fairly. So they created a new leadership structure and other systems to take care of them. We see systems for how money was handled between the churches. And so I see systems that are really important in Scripture, and I see some people neglect that. Even though I feel like, man, we lost a great guy. He was called. Yeah. He loved the Lord and his family, and he took care of himself and lived with discipline, but he wasn't willing to pay attention to those things or get somebody in who would, and now he's gone.
Yeah, well, the church is both an organism and an organization, if you think of it like that. And we definitely see clear principles of organization, both in the Old Testament and New Testament. So if we want to impact people and bring the gospel to as many people as we can in a neighborhood, in a community, in a city, we're going to have to be organized enough in order to actually reach those people. Because if I'm by myself, not very competent, nobody around me, not very good at systems and structures at all, I'm going to have a difficult time actually reaching people, and I don't see that indicated in the Bible at all.
Kuyper, Kuyper, wrote a book called The Church as Both Organism and Organization, and that really helped me as I was trying to think about the church as an organism, but we have to have some organization. I don't want to go too far to one side or to the other. But to have organization within the organism, I think, is important. I will often talk about how, I was a science major, and so I think biologically, I think systems is sort of the way I think, which works because the church is a body. And so I think about our systems and how we don't see them, but they're operating invisibly. I think when we see systems, that's an organization. When the systems are functioning almost invisibly and autonomically, that is an organism. But we have a lot of systems in our body and a lot of structure, and I don't think it's wrong to see an organism with systems.
Well, and think about the concept of planning in the Bible. So planning is essentially, we see that both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, the value of planning. We plan for our family. We plan what we're going to eat, how we're going to spend our money, what nights we're going to be home for dinner, what car we're going to buy, where we're going to live, those sorts of things. We plan for all that. We do the same thing in a local church. We plan in a local church. We plan for how people are going to engage in community, or at least how we're going to do our best to facilitate that. We plan for how we can best feed people with the Word of God. We plan for new people that have not yet met Christ that are going to come visit us, and so are going to come visit our church worship gathering on a Sunday. We plan for all those things. We build those structures. So building structures is essentially a planning mechanism to say we want to reach people. We have to plan to reach people because we believe God's going to bring them to us.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to see the holiness in that, and I think some guys don't. Brian, when you look at the state of the church out there, you have a perspective. I have one that's pretty big, but yours is way bigger than mine. You're seeing more pastors meeting in more churches. You're seeing a lot. There are a lot of things I'm excited about, a lot actually. And in Acts 29, there are things I'm really excited about. In our Church Project Network, there are things I'm excited about. I'm glad that I'm part of Acts 29 and part of Church Project Network. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about some things I'm seeing happening in the Christian landscape in America. So what are you most excited about? And then what are you most concerned about?
Well, what I'm most excited about right now is that it feels like we have spiritual opportunity beyond what I've seen. I shouldn't say opportunity, maybe. I'm trying to think of the right language for this, but there seems to be a spiritual stirring and spiritual awakening that's happening in the U.S. And at first I thought it was perhaps only segmented to certain parts of the U.S., parts that might inherently perhaps have been more historically Christian, that sort of thing. But that doesn't seem to be the case at all. It really seems that there's a spiritual awakening happening across the U.S.
Yeah.
So what I'm really excited about is that it really feels like just in the last 3 or 4 years, the opportunity for us, particularly at reaching Gen Z young people for Christ, just feels like there's a lot of openness right now. And I mean, we're experiencing that in every state we go to, wherever we go, just a lot of excitement there.
Yeah.
So, and that, we're seeing headlines and newspaper articles from countries in Europe.
Yeah.
In France, for example, about Easter Sunday 2025, there were like 3 times as many people baptized as in 2023. So I have a whole bunch of headlines from newspapers and stories around the world that just really capture what's happening there.
Yeah.
So we have a really amazing opportunity that I think we've prayed for a long time that I haven't seen in the last 20 or 25 or 30 years in my adult life. What am I most concerned about? Good theology in the midst of that would be one. I don't know if I'm most concerned about it, but where there is spiritual awakening, where there is spiritual interest, I think the devil is there to counterfeit that and to sweep people into things that aren't theologically true or aren't doctrinally solid. And so I think it's really, really important right now for us to have churches that know what they believe, that know theology, that disciple people. I remember my dad said to me one time, you want to know the kind of Christian sort of tradition that a person is in, look at what they were saved into in their first 2 years. So if you were saved into the Assembly of God world or the Presbyterian world or whatever sort of background or denominational affiliation you might have, so many people stick with that for their whole life. So if there truly is an outpouring of the Spirit and people are coming to know Christ, it's going to be really important that we teach people solid theology, that we teach people who God is, because we have to assume that there's going to be some counterfeit revival along the way.
Yeah, I think that's good. How do we do that? Like, how do we make sure that where these revivals are happening, we have really solid doctrine to attach to this move of God?
Well, that feels like a softball that you threw at me right there.
Yeah, sure, man. I want to make this easy on you.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Well, we have to plant churches all over the place.
Yeah.
So, first of all, let me back up before church planting. We need you who are listening to this podcast today in our churches to prepare and preach excellent sermons and teach people the Bible. So as we lead people to Christ, I'm already building in the fact that we're doing good evangelism. So let's say, I don't want to assume that, but let's just say we're doing good evangelism. People are coming to know Christ. Spirit is active. We need to make sure that we're discipling these people and plugging these people into community and teaching these people. And I mean, it's classic Great Commission. It doesn't stop at the altar. It's teaching them to obey all things that I've commanded. That's you, right? Yeah. So we're making disciples. We're not just making a convert.
That's
right. Okay, so the second thing we have to do is keep planting churches. And so you believe in that. I believe in that. Our friends all believe in that. Our churches believe in that. So we've got to make sure that the churches we currently have are paying attention to discipling people and training people up. And I would say to that extent, like Church Project is doing excellently, is training up leaders and sending them out, start new churches. And then we've got to plant churches all over the place, which we're doing.
Well, I love your answer, and I agree with it. The only thing I disagree with is that we're doing it excellently. I think we're fine, which is my least favorite word. I tell her I hate the word fine. For me, that isn't a good word. So we're doing better, but we want to get better because we believe in that too. And I really think, I grew up in a church that was doctrinally sound. I learned the word. Not so much globally or missionally focused, and definitely not a church planting church. I didn't even hear that idea until I was, in college and had some friends sort of get into some, pathways to plant a church. I'm like, what is this, And so, but I really love that our church is growing in our thinking about our calling. I have, an idea that I wonder how you would wrestle this out. I didn't prep you for this, so you may say pass, but there is an apostolic calling on a person, and we see that with people who will go and help begin movements of churches. I actually think there may be apostolic calling on churches, like an apostolic anointing on some churches to do that. I think every church is called to this, but some are doing this more fantastically than others. What do you think the role of every church is in church planting? But there are some churches who may have some sense of an apostolic calling or designation, or at least they're more able than others to really go after. So every church is called to do this, but some churches, and I think it would be a challenge for Church Project because we're not where we want to be. So a church like Church Project, what would you say? But first, what's for every church?
Well, the parable of the talents comes to mind right away.
Makes sense.
So take the individual application of that and say, whatever God has given me individually, He expects me to invest in the kingdom.
Yeah.
So when I think about that at a corporate level,
That's
as
good.
the church, I would think, look, all over the United States and all over the world, there are small groups of people gathering together in churches. 30, 40, 70, 80, 90 people. Let's just say under 100 people. And there are tens of thousands of churches that are under 100 people. And your responsibility as a local church is make disciples. And make disciples begins with non-disciples.
That's
it doesn't
right.
begin with people that have been Christians for 30 years. Again, if people come to you that have been Christians for 30 years, then teach them and train them, but make disciples starting with non-disciples. I would argue engage in missions. I did some writing a few years ago on how to become a church planting church. You've got to think about your missions budget and think about your philosophy. So engage in missions. I remember when our church that I planted we were just getting going, and we probably had 70 people or 80 people. We partnered with a couple of other local churches in our town to send and support a missionary.
Cool.
And then we partnered with 2 or 3 other churches to send and support a church planter.
Nice.
So for every church, make disciples in your own congregation, and then determine what has God called us to do beyond our walls, where we can make an impact.
Beautiful.
Regardless of what God has given us. And God's called everybody.
That's right.
Like all of us, regardless of church size, can do that. So I do want to emphasize, if you're I'm going to talk about church planting, and then I'll answer the second part of your question. If you're a smaller church, let's just say under 100 people, or even a church over 100 people that has no history of church planting, your first step is not to find some interns and send out some church planters. Your first step is to allocate some funding to church planting and some emphasis to church planting, not just money, but just emphasis. Like we're going to think about this. We're going to allocate some resources to it. And then I would say your second step is find somebody to partner with. Don't raise up your own planter.
Yeah, I agree.
Find someone to partner with and do that for 4 or 5 years. Let's say you partner with an organization like Acts 29, or if you're with somebody else, you partner with 4 or 5 other churches in helping plant the church. I was just in West Virginia, and the 8 churches in Acts 29 out there, 8 or 9, came together to plant and fund the church. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So rather than raising up your own sort of intern, then partner with a group of people and plant the church. You know what you'll find is after 4 or 5, 6 churches, 4, 5, 6 years, you've done that a number of times, and you're more suited to raise up somebody yourself from within because you've changed the culture.
That's good.
Now, for the big church, let's go back to the parable of talents again. Let's say you're 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people. You just have much more opportunity. I don't want to moralize it and say that you're spiritually better. When you stand before God, God won't say like, awesome, you pastored a huge church.
That's right.
But you do have more resources to invest and more responsibility in some way, I guess. And so what I would say for that sort of that church that maybe has, I don't know if I'd use the word anointing or not. So that church that has greater opportunity because of greater resources, greater influence, greater giving or more, then I think that church has to really carefully think through how will we invest these resources into the kingdom. And that might be $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million a year that you're investing, or $10 million a year. And I think there's a stewardship issue there that a large church has to steward. Now, our friend Phil Hopper, who's out in Kansas City, I was with Phil Hopper for lunch last week, Abundant Life in Kansas City, and they've got, I think, 10 church planting interns in their church. And so this is a church that's very big, over 10,000 people, I believe. And so what they're doing is they're aggressively training up, sending out planters, aggressively partnering in work all over the world, because a big church like Church Project or Abundant Life, our friend Phil, is going to have opportunity to do that and be somewhat of a, that's why in Acts 29 we call those churches hub churches, because we feel like they're a hub for greater kingdom ministry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you breaking that down. I do, like, I wish my local church would have helped put in my mind this sense of our calling to help plant other churches. I mean, maybe they did something I wasn't aware, but I was there a long time. I don't remember it. But, and I wish I would have been a part of it earlier, and I want us to be more. I do want people in our church to get even more excited about this, and that's on us, our leadership, to get there, and we're working on that now. As we wrap this up, Brian, you know, we have people inside and outside Church Project listening to this, you know, but if you could encourage, from what you know about Church Project, if you could encourage the people who are a part of Church Project, I mean, would you have a word of encouragement for them?
I sure would. First of all, when I travel, what always strikes me is how God sovereignly puts people in cities and places to be salt and light in those places. So I have been to Church Project on a Sunday and worshiped with you, not on this trip, but on my last trip a few months ago. Spent a lot of time with your pastor and with your pastoral team and your staff. Just was able to greet several of them and spend some time with them just today. And what I would say is I'm deeply encouraged for you that you have this level of leadership in your church, that you have this opportunity. Even as I look out the window as we film this podcast in the Woodlands, Texas, you know, what I would say to you is know that God has put you where you are. I love the location, vocation, recreation sort of thing, where you work, where you live, where you play. If God is sovereign enough to put you in those places, he's sovereign enough to use you. So I would say, hey, be thankful for your church, invest in your church, be thankful that God has put you here. Look to build his church as a part of Church Project, because you have a great opportunity in this church.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. And I agree with you. I think God's entrusted a lot to us, and I think we have a long way to go, but I'm grateful for what he's done. And I love these people, man, and I love this church, and God's given us some incredible people here. Hey, thank you for what you do. Thank you for leading a great network. Thank you for investing in other pastors and leaders, including me and many. And I'm just grateful that you're staying in the game and giving your life for the kingdom. I had a guy from our church a few years ago prayed at lunch with me, and it struck me. He said, God, thank you. He said, may I pray? I said, sure. And he said, God, thank you for our time, whatever. And then he said, thank you that Jason isn't giving his life to banking or to business, but he's giving it to the local body, the local church. And I'm grateful for you giving your life to the local church. And I know you could be doing other things, and at other times have done some of that, and you could, but I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing. It's benefited me and our church and so many others. So thank you.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for jumping in with us today. And thank you for watching this. Here's the only thing we ask of you. If it's good for you, like it, share it with other people. That's the way they'll find out about it. If it's not good for you, quit watching this thing. You're wasting your time. But if it's helpful, let other people in on it. You're great. You're loved. I hope you have a great week ahead. See you soon.